So we've covered off the smart saving solution, which is how you can prepare for getting to financial freedom. But what we said next was, if we really want to create financial freedom as effectively as possible, then we need to create a plan. And so what I want to do now is dive into what we call the Safe Retirement Roadmap. And this is a 4-step process where we help our clients get much better clarity on their financial future. What does their future look like? Are they on track to have enough money, or are they on track to run out? And what it really is the future that they want, and how are they going to get there? So the first part of this is about clarity in terms of what you actually want. Because when we speak to a lot of clients, they don't generally know what's important to them in the future. Some people do, but the vast majority of people don't actually know what's important to them in the future. So what we spend a lot of time talking about with the clients when we first meet them is what we call scenarios. What really is important to them in the future? And when we meet a client, we go through a number of exercises to really help them understand what's important to them in the future. This isn't the right environment to go through that with you. But just to give you an idea of one of the questions we might be asking you, you might want to think about something along the lines of, if you had all the money that you needed to be financially secure for the rest of your life, so money's now no object, how would you live your life differently? So give a little bit of thought to that and start to push with that question, because ultimately if you answer that question, you're starting to think about what's really important to you in the future. What we then need to do is start to think about how your future currently looks like. What are you currently on track to achieve? Are you on track to have enough money to be able to retire when you want to retire? One of the worst examples I remember seeing in our business is a guy came to us. He was at age 65 and he'd just been diagnosed terminally ill with cancer. He'd got 6 months to live. Now this guy had a financial advisor, he had pensions, and his advisor was giving him the advice that he needed on his pension. But what he didn't have was a financial planner. And so what he didn't realise was, even though this guy was in a job he hated, he'd spent the last 5 years of his life working in that job he hated, even though he actually had enough money to retire at age 60. If he had a financial planner in place and a financial plan in place, then he would have known that he could have actually stopped working at 60 rather than 65, and the last 5 years of his life could have been spent doing what was really important to him rather than the job that he hated. So what we want to do is forecast what the future looks like. And to show you how we do that, I want to take you through what's called a lifetime cash flow forecast. Now, a lifetime cash flow forecast is the system and the tool that we use to model what your financial future looks like. Are you on track to run out, or are you on track to have too much? And to do that, I'm going to use an example client of mine. Now, this was a very successful guy, very, very well respected. In fact, actually, he's known around the world for what he does. He's extremely good at what he does, and he has a worldwide following. There's 2 key charts to a lifetime cash flow forecast. The first is the income versus expenditure chart. So what this is looking at is how much income have you got available each year for the rest of your life through to age 100, and what are your expenses each year. Now, what you'll notice on this chart is that the blue blocks are the income for each year, and there's one of those for each year through to age 100. Now, it's important just to touch on why we pick age 100, because many people often say, well, I'm never going to live to 100. But if I have a room full of, say, 20 people at the Wealth Workshop, and I say who's going to live to age 100, I reckon at the moment it's likely that 3, 4, or maybe even 5 of those people will make it to age 100. So it's all very well having a financial plan that makes sure that you've got enough money to 90, but if you happen to be one of those people that makes it to 100, then you're stuffed. If you ran out of money at 90 and you make it to 100, you're in a mess. So you don't want too much life at the end of your money. And so that's why we assume that everybody lives to age 100, to make sure that you've got enough money to get you to that stage. So, as I said, this chart shows you the amount of income that's available each year. What you'll also notice is there's a black line that runs along the top of this, That's this person's required expenditure each year. Now, blue is good because blue means there's enough income to meet the expenditure. Red is bad. That means there's not enough income. So in this example, the client actually at around about age 95 is running out of income. So this is a warning sign for this particular person. This is a very successful person, as I said. The second key chart that we want to look at is what's called the liquid assets chart. So this shows us what's going on behind the scenes. How much money have you got in your investments, in your pensions, and in your savings for each year for the rest of your life? Now this chart again applies to the same client example. So this person is, the reason that they ran out of income in their mid-90s is because they'd spent all their money. They'd spent all of the different savings, investments and pensions and they'd run out. Now if you look closely at this, so yellow is cash, orange is investments and brown is pensions. The yellow in cash shows that this person had got over around £600,000 in cash at that moment in time. They'd got a good chunk in investments and they'd also got a good chunk in ISAs. So this looks like somebody that's doing some sensible financial planning, not somebody you would think is on track to run out of money later on in life. So the beautiful thing about lifetime cash flow forecasting is it brings those problems to our attention at a stage when we can do something about them. What it also does is allow us to model different scenarios. So what we were able to do is to say, well, okay, Mr. Client, if we make these changes, these are the recommendations that we would suggest you implement to improve this situation. We're not asking him to put aside any more money than he currently is, but what we are doing is saying, well, if we make these changes, get some better growth, save some more tax, take some different strategies, then as a result of those changes, we can eliminate the red. So we can say, well, on his income expenditure chart, he's now no longer going to run out of money in his 90s. He's going to have enough income right the way through to age 100. But he was going to make it to 95 anyway, so that might not seem a big deal. So the liquid assets chart is then the one that really tells us the story. Because instead of running out of money in his mid-90s, at age 100, he's still got £1.3 million left in investments. And that's £1.3 million in today's money. We've taken inflation off that so that you can compute it in today's monetary terms. So that's an additional £1.3 million his children will inherit just from making these changes. So lifetime cash flow forecasting has enabled him to see the impact that making some changes to his finances that will have on his future and actually his children's future too. What we can then start to do is be even smarter and say, well, okay, what do we really want to do in retirement? What's on the bucket list? How much are we going to spend? And if we build and design a bucket list income, we can say, well, we can have all of these amazing things on top of what we'd already planned for and still have enough income to last through to age 100 and still not run out of money at that point. So lifetime cash flow forecasting is an amazingly powerful tool to get you to see into the future and also to understand the impact of the decisions you make today on that future. Now, one thing that lifetime cash flow forecasting always reminds me of is a story when I first moved to London. So when I first moved to London, I was living in Chiswick, mainly because being a farmer's son, it was the leafiest part of London I could find. So I was living in Chiswick and we heard about a party that was going on in Brighton. And me and two girlfriends, and by the way, they're friends that were girls, not two girlfriends, before you question my ethics, heard about this party and we said, right, we're going to go down to Brighton to this party. Now I was the only one that had a car out of the three of us. I didn't have a map in the car and it was long before the days of Google Map and sat-nav. Well, we lived in West London. Brighton's on the south coast. How difficult could it be to drive from Chiswick down to Brighton? There's road signs all the way. So we head off out of Chiswick and we made some bad decisions early on. We ended up on the A3, I think, but we saw signs to Bournemouth and we knew Bournemouth was on the south coast, so we figured, how far, that can't be that far off. We're bound to see signs for Brighton along the way and we'll just turn left. An hour and a half into the journey, that should have taken us an hour and a half, we had to drive into a service station, say, firstly, please can we buy a map? And secondly, please can you tell us where on that map we are, because we are hopelessly lost. The reason I tell you this story is because the approach that we took to that journey is the approach that most people take to their finances. So what they do is they only ever look at the next road sign. They're not thinking about the overall destination, where they're going to end up 20, 30, 40 years from now. They're only thinking about, well, I've had this piece of paper in, or I need to make this piece of decision now. It's the next road sign. And as a result, they make some bad decisions. Now, if I was doing a long journey with my family today, being an organised dad, what I'd probably do is I'd put the route into SatNav, I'd get an idea for the time and the route that I'm going to take. But I know that my SatNav is going to get me there as quickly as it possibly can. If there's a roadblock along the way, it's going to divert me around it. And if en route to the party I find out that the party's moved from Brighton to Bournemouth, it's going to then get me to Bournemouth as quickly as possible. And the reason I tell you this is because the lifetime cash flow forecast is your SatNav for your financial journey. It's what gets you to your destination as quickly as possible. It's the tool that allows you to make sure that you don't miss the party with regards to your own retirement. So lifetime cash flow forecasting is the most powerful exercise that we can take clients through, because it just gives them more clarity than they've ever had before.